Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into something that completely flips a narrative we have all been hearing for the last 50 years. You know the story. For 5 decades, older Americans have been told this very simple, honestly fear-based story about cholesterol, that it's a toxic substance, basically industrial waste clogging up your arteries, and that it needs to be driven as low as humanly possible. But as we dig into the actual research today, you're going to discover that the truth about cholesterol, especially for those of us over 60, is dramatically more complex, highly nuanced, and surprisingly empowering. Here is a quick roadmap of exactly what we'll be covering in this explainer. First, the 50-year cholesterol myth. Second, the over 60 cholesterol paradox. Third, flaws in standard testing. Fourth, the statin controversy. Fifth, better heart risk predictors. And sixth, real protection after 60. Let's jump right into section 1, the 50-year cholesterol myth. So, for decades, dietary guidelines completely demonized foods like eggs and butter, terrifying millions of people into obsessing over a single number on a blood test without ever really understanding what that number even means. But when you look at the research, it reveals a massive biological reality. 75 to 80% cholesterol is so fundamentally essential to human life that your body absolutely does not leave its supply up to chance. In fact, your liver independently manufactures roughly 75 to 80% of the cholesterol currently in your bloodstream, completely regardless of what you had for breakfast. It uses this incredibly sophisticated feedback loop. If you eat less cholesterol, your liver just makes more of it. If you eat more, it makes less. And this, by the way, is exactly why the American Dietary Guidelines quietly dropped their upper limit on dietary cholesterol consumption back in 2015. Now, when we talk about cholesterol, we really have to understand how it actually travels. Cholesterol is a fat, right? And your blood is mostly water. As we all know, fat and water just don't mix. So your body packages it up into what are called lipoproteins. Think of these as tiny, microscopic submarines. They're specialized transport vehicles with very specific biological jobs. So the old idea that LDL is strictly bad and HDL is strictly good is just a massive oversimplification of a highly sophisticated biological transport system. That brings us to section 2. The over 60 cholesterol paradox. This is where things get truly fascinating. I want to ask you this directly. Does having higher cholesterol automatically mean a higher risk of dying after you turn 60? I mean, based on everything we've been taught, the answer should be an obvious, resounding yes. But the data tells a completely different story. A landmark 2016 review published in the BMJ Open analyzed data from nearly 70,000 elderly adults. And what they found was stunning. In 92% of the study populations, there was either no association or an inverse association between LDL cholesterol and all-cause mortality. Let that sink in for a second. For the vast majority of seniors in these studies, having higher LDL cholesterol was actually associated with living longer, not dying sooner. Only 8% showed a positive association with mortality. So the multi-million-dollar question is, why? Why on earth is it protective? Well, it's because cholesterol is a vital ally as we age. It's absolutely critical for immune function to help fight off infections. It's the structural foundation for your cellular repair. It's a key component of the myelin sheath, which is what insulates your nerve fibers so your brain can send rapid signals. Plus, it's the raw material your body uses to manufacture essential hormones like testosterone and estrogen. And those hormones are exactly what support the muscle mass needed to keep older adults strong and physically functioning. Let's move on to section 3, flaws in standard testing. Okay, so if cholesterol is this important to our bodies, why are we constantly trying to crush it? Honestly, it comes down to bad data. The standard lipid panel you get at the doctor usually doesn't even measure your LDL directly. It just estimates it using an outdated mathematical formula called the Friedewald equation. But worse than that, it completely misses particle size. Two people can literally have the exact same LDL number on a standard test, but completely different cardiovascular risks. Why is that? Because advanced testing shows us that some particles are large and buoyant, and those are relatively benign. But other particles are small, dense, and really prone to oxidation. Those small ones are the highly dangerous particles that penetrate your arterial walls and drive plaque formation. And standard tests are completely blind to this difference. Next up, section 4, the statin controversy. Because of this heavy reliance on standard testing, statins are now taken by roughly 40 million Americans. Now, for folks who already have established heart disease, the evidence for statins is reasonably strong. But for primary prevention, meaning seniors who have never actually had a heart attack, the data is highly contested. According to a systematic review in JAMA Internal Medicine, the absolute risk reduction of having a heart attack for a moderate risk patient taking a statin for primary prevention is only about 1 to 2% over 5 years. To put that into perspective, this means if 100 people take the medication every single day for 5 years, only 1 or 2 of them will actually avoid a heart attack they otherwise would have had. The other 98 or 99 are taking it without receiving that specific cardiovascular benefit. And while taking the medication, patients obviously have to weigh the real-world side effects. Up to 20% of users experience statin-associated muscle symptoms, which is partly because statins deplete coenzyme Q10, an antioxidant that's totally essential for muscle energy. Furthermore, multiple clinical trials show that statins actually increase the risk of developing type 2 diabetes by 10 to 12%. That is a very concerning metric for seniors who might already be facing metabolic challenges. Now, we're exploring this data not to offer medical advice, but just to ensure you have the full impartial picture so you can have an informed conversation with your doctor.
Which perfectly cues up Section 5, Better Heart Risk Predictors.
If standard cholesterol numbers are flawed, we desperately need better tools, and thankfully we have them. First is the CAC score. This is a non-invasive CT scan that directly measures the actual calcified plaque inside your arteries. A score of 0 means very low risk, even if your standard LDL is technically high. Then we have apolipoprotein B, or ApoB. This gives a direct count of those dangerous, small, atherogenic particles we talked about earlier. And don't forget lipoprotein A. This is the genetically elevated risk factor that's present in about 20% of Americans, yet standard panels miss it entirely. And then there's high-sensitivity C-reactive protein, or HSCRP. The landmark Jupiter trial proved something incredibly important. People with completely normal LDL but high HSCRP had significantly elevated cardiovascular risk. It turns out that inflammation, not just cholesterol alone, is the critical enemy driving cardiovascular disease. Let's bring it all home with Section 6, Real Protection After 60. Once we finally stop obsessing over a single, oversimplified number, we can start focusing on what actually works. The lifestyle interventions with the absolute strongest evidence for protecting your heart operate way beyond just simple cholesterol lowering. Following a Mediterranean diet naturally reduces that chronic inflammation we just talked about. Getting regular aerobic exercise actually improves the function of your blood vessels. Keeping your systolic blood pressure below 130 is quite literally the single most powerful thing you can do to prevent a stroke. You might also consider 2 to 4 grams of omega-3s daily and aggressively manage insulin resistance through your lifestyle to stop those dangerous small, dense particles from forming in the first place. So, as we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with one final thought. Ask yourself, do you have the complete picture you need to have an empowered conversation with your doctor about your true cardiovascular risk? Because protecting your heart after 60 isn't about fear. It's about having the right data, looking at the advanced markers, addressing inflammation, and taking proactive control of your metabolic health for the decades ahead. Thank you so much for learning with me today. Keep asking those questions, keep digging into the science, and take charge of your health.